Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon or morning, wherever you may be in the world. My name is Jesse Samasuo. I am the Senior Manager for Policy and Insights here at Apolitical, calling in today from a slightly grey London. I'm hoping that it's slightly brighter and happier wherever you are in the world. Please do share in the chat where you're joining us from. We'd love to know your name, maybe which country you're in, and maybe what you do in government. We have two absolutely brilliant speakers that are joining us today. And I'm really looking forward to introducing them both to share their presentations. But please, it's great to have you with us. Thanks, Daniela. Great to have you from Southeast Texas. Amazing. Very early in the morning, maybe for you as well. So appreciate the effort. Christy, great to have you with us from Canada. Please do keep sharing in the chat and so that everyone, so your colleagues can see what we are joining from. So today we're going to be discussing how to use an experimentation mindset and approach to get more comfortable with AI. Whether you're just getting started or hoping for more confidence in writing prompts, checking outputs, using tools safely and ethically, and more. For those of you that may be joining us for the first time, welcome to Apolitical. We are the world's largest community for government and used by over 250,000 public servants and policymakers in over 170 countries. Our mission is a really, really simple one, but a really important one. We're here to help make government smarter, and we do that by equipping public servants just like you with knowledge and skills you need to lead the change in your government. So great to have you all with us. Jamie, Vicky, Victoria, Brogan, so many of you. Great to have you. Christian from Germany, thanks for joining us. I'll get a few technical notes and we'll do some kind of icebreakers just to get us started. So for those of you that aren't aware, we have our AI in government community, which more than 10,000 public servants around the world are part of. My colleague Joel is just about to share a link in the chat. This is an online community to share conversations, insights, ideas, and resources on the use of AI in government through connecting and speaking with your peers around the world. And this space is open to all public servants, whether you consider yourself an AI expert or just getting started. Your app is absolutely the right space to kind of ask questions and share resources. So I definitely recommend checking that out. Few technical notes before we get started. This event is recorded for on-demand viewing for everyone in the Apolitical community. So please don't record it yourself. We'll be sharing the recording afterwards, so you'll definitely get that as well as presentation slides from the folks that are presenting today. If you have any questions about our data privacy policies and anything like that, please check it out on the bottom of our website, apolitical.co. Lastly, you have closed captions, which you can toggle on or off in your screen settings. But if you have any questions, please do shout and we'll be able to help. That's all the boring stuff out of the way. So a quick couple of poll questions that we'll just run through just to get a sense of how everyone is approaching today's topic and what kind of questions you have and sort of experience you might have and are looking to gain. So the first poll question, which you should see coming up on your screen, when you think of experimenting with AI at work, what's your first reaction? So when you think about experimenting with AI at work, what is your first reaction? Excited, hopeful, curious, cautious, unsure, concerned? Let us know and we can share the results back with you as well. Let's see who else is with us. Edinburgh, Germany, a few folks from Germany, from Wales, Robin, Devon. So good to have you with us. So hopefully you should see the results coming through just now. Interesting. So we have an interesting mix. Around half of you, around 45% are saying curious. It's definitely tipping more positive than negative. So I would say around 75% overall positive, 20% of you are very excited, and then around 10% unsure or concerned. That's really interesting. We'll be sharing those results with you back after the event today. Second question really quickly. So if you haven't started experimenting with AI at work, what is stopping you? So there's 6 or 7 options here you can choose from. What's stopping you from experimenting with AI today? Don't have to be experimenting, just a kind of question to get a sense where everyone's joining today's topic from. So there's a range here from I'm not sure what's allowed to I'm worried about getting it wrong to something else, which you can absolutely share in the chat as well. Okay, let's see what comes up. Okay, wow, okay. A good chunk of you, around 50%, have already started experimenting, so you're definitely in the right place. Around 15% say, I'm not sure what's allowed. Interestingly, 10% say I don't have access to the right tools. And a similar portion say I don't know how to get started. I'll definitely check out the chat to see what others are saying. Time, interestingly, is an interesting factor for some of you. And last but not least, our very last poll question, just that we ask every single one of our AI events: how often are you using generative AI tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, or Microsoft Copilot in your work? This is something we've been tracking for the last couple of years, so we're always interested to see how much people are using AI at work. So is it daily, weekly, not that often, or you've never used them at all? And we'll share these results with everyone in our community after the event today. So wow, 40% saying daily, around 25% saying weekly, just around 10% saying not using them. So that number is always increasing, which is really interesting. Thanks everyone for sharing, and we'll share those results back with you after the event. Excellent. Well, without further ado, I would love to introduce both of our two brilliant speakers, Christian Wagner and Ivan Nayak. For those of you that are wondering, one of our speakers, Alexandra Rodney, manager of the Transformation Oversight Unit in the government of Toronto's Ministry of Health, was called last minute into an important meeting. I'm sure many of you can sympathize with this, and we're very, very grateful to Alexandra for connecting us with Ivan, who's her colleague, and really looking forward to him sharing his insights. So Christian Wagner leads global public policy for the Gemini app, Google's personal AI assistant, and he's based in San Francisco. He advises on strategic AI, privacy, safety, copyright, competition, and information quality governance, and leads Gemini's external engagements with policymakers globally. Prior to that role, he worked in Google's EU governmental relations team in Brussels and spearheaded digital policy for Tech America Europe. Christian, really, really great to have you with us. Ivan is a transformation leader with over 15 years of experience across government, healthcare, and the manufacturing industry. He currently is driving enterprise-wide process improvement using generative AI as the Senior Manager of Lean Strategy Innovation Division in the Ontario Public Service. You can read both of their full bios in the Resources tab on the bottom of your Zoom screen. But for now, I will hand over to Ivan to hear his presentation. Thanks, Ivan. We can see your screen, but I think you might still be on mute.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jesse, for that very kind words. Also the poll, which is very interesting to read and see where everybody is when it comes to experimenting and knowing about AI and how to use them. Hopefully my talk over here will give some idea about like how to start, because I see at least 15% of the audience right now is like, okay, I don't know how to start. And then that is where most of my talk will be. So yeah, so the conversation is about how to experiment with AI. Just shift here. Okay. So the agenda for the next 15 minutes is, first we'll start, like before we go into the how, we'll talk about a bit more about the why. Why should you be, if you're not already working or using those tools? And then there's this 4-step method of experimenting. It comes from the lean mindset, it comes from agile, if you have heard of those concepts before. Just 4 steps, and it works as a cycle. So plan, do, check, act, or adjust, and then you go back to plan. And then I'll spend some more time on each of those 4 aspects of experimenting. Getting right into the why of the experimentation. So why should we experiment with AI, especially in a public service context? So if you have heard about everything that's going on in the world right now, public servants are facing a capacity crisis. Workloads are increasing while resources and time remain limited. And generative AI tools offer a way to reduce the burden of repetitive manual tasks, thereby freeing up time for higher value work. And while it may feel like experimentation with AI is, it feels like cheating, but it's not. It's a strategic adaptation. using AI or all the AI tools that are available doesn't mean cutting corners. It means reframing how we work. So leveraging tools to enhance productivity, creativity, overall public service delivery, that is where it'll be useful. And just as calculators like long time back didn't replace math skills, generative AI as a tool won't replace human judgment. It does augment it as much as possible. So why experiment? To discover low risk, high impact efficiencies, to build confidence navigating emerging technologies so that we are not left behind when it does take on a whole chunk of our work. And also to foster a culture of learning and innovation in the public sector. Moving on to the how part of the experimentation. So as I mentioned, PDCA or Plan, Do, Check, Act is a well-known four-step method to improve processes. Starts with planning. So if you don't know where to start with, it's like think of your daily work. Think of things that you're doing that's repetitive. Outlook inbox, checking mails. So identify a problem or opportunity and then doing. So now, once you have thought about or brainstorm within your team, think of how do you go about implementing a solution or experiment. Then check or evaluate the results, and then acting or adjusting. So adopting that solution or refining your approach, and then starting again. So the PDCA method or the Plan, Do, Check, Act method is ideal to follow for a safe, structured experimentation with AI. So to summarize, identify a task or process to improve, try a generative AI tool within your policy boundaries. Check is review the output critically, and act or adjust is decide what to do next and share your learnings. So when it comes to thinking about what experiment to begin with, as I just mentioned, do an individual or a team brainstorm to think about the repetitive or time-consuming tasks that you do most often, maybe on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, especially the ones that frustrate you the most. So think of those pain points. And then think of generative AI tools as a personal assistant of sort. So you're assigning them a task to see how they do it. And also, before diving into choosing a tool, investigate how your institution has policies around generative AI use. That there would be guidelines that would be available to you about which tools you should be using, which tools you shouldn't be using. So look into that a bit more before you start using. And the rules are surrounding it. And are you restricted from uploading any kinds of documents to that particular tool? And if your institution subscribes to a tool, let's say in a Microsoft environment, there's Copilot available. They'll also likely have some instructions that can help you get started with it. So what I, in my daily work, find a Copilot, which is our tool of choice within the Ontario Public Service, helps me summarize large data sets like survey data or interview data that can be very time consuming to analyze for key insights. And if you're a manager or a leader within the space, it's important to remember that you play a big part in creating a culture of encouraging your team members to experiment with the tools, including generative AI tools, to see if they can make delivering work products easier. So create that space for within the team for them to use it. And see how it goes and see and the learnings, share it within the team. I'll give a brief example over here of like what planning with a case study looks like. So let's say a mid-level policy advisor identifies briefing note preparation as a repetitive, time-consuming task. The first thing they do is check institutional guidance and confirm that Copilot or insert a particular generative AI tool here is an approved tool for internal use. And they ask themselves or within the team or in a brainstorming session with the team, can this tool, in this case, Copilot, help me summarize reports faster? Can it help me also maintain the tone and structure across the notes? So depending on who the audience you're creating this particular report for, they have a preference for that report to have a particular tone. So they think about those two questions first. And these are some steps for you to try it out. So using your approved tool, generate a first draft of a document and then edit it. And edit your own draft using the AI suggestions. So again, you can leverage AI tools to give you suggestions about, okay, I don't like this part of the output. Could I change it to so that it matches the tone that I'm looking for? And ask for structure or formatting help. So if you need it in a bullet point, if you need a paragraph, you're turning those bullet points into summaries. You can do that with your tools, generative AI tool as well. So this is just a general prompt engineering formula over here. But again, there are so many, like many articles written on prompt engineering. This is a simple example of it. So it says, summarize this 10-page report. So you'll attach your 10-page report into 3 key points for a director level audience, focusing on strategic implications only. This follows a prompt formula of like action plus content or source, the format that you want the output to be in, the audience that you're generating this report for, and if you have any constraint or goal. So in this case, it's strategic implications only. So it knows how to proceed forward with it. And once it gives you an output, you will then critically refine the output based on your expertise. So they upload a 15-page technical report to Copilot and Prompt, as I just mentioned. And then Copilot generates a draft summary. And then the advisor or the human at the other end of it then prompts, okay, rewrite this in a tone of a government briefing note. So you drill down into a bit more specifics when it comes to the following prompts after that. And this is something that I've mentioned before, but you always need to review the AI outputs. AI outputs are fast, and it sort of at a higher level makes sense, but the data sets that they are trained on may not be without its faults. So it is not flawless. So that is where the human judgment comes into play, where you're always checking for factual accuracy, the tone, the bias. Now, sometimes there might be implied biases that the data set that the AI is trained on might include. So always be on the lookout for that. There might be outdated information that it was originally trained on, and it may miss a whole lot of context or nuance. So what does this look like in case of an example? So you ask it to draft a plain language summary, and it's mostly accurate. It seems good at the surface level, but the language is still a bit technical. And that word a bit is subjective, like it depends on the human or the other end of it, the advisor, the political advisor, the policy advisor, who the audience is. You have a better connection with the audience than a generative AI tool. So you'll keep a lookout for that. And then you edit the summary manually. So once it gives you an output, the job is not done. You're still looking over it and critically refining everything that it gives. So it does the heavy work for you, but it do not completely depend on the output is what I'm saying over here.
I mean, just a quick notice on time, if you maybe another minute or two. Thanks.
Yeah, so the advisor reviews the output of the government briefing note. The summary is clear and well structured. One key stakeholder concern is missing, which they have found out after critically reviewing it. The tone is mostly appropriate, but needs minor tweaks. And then they go in and manually add and address all the concerns and adjust the tone. And then at the end, the act part or the adjust part, use the output if it meets your needs, refine and reuse if it needs improvement, or even discard and rethink if it misses the mark completely. And then share your learnings within the team. So talk about what worked, what didn't with your team, share the experiments, it builds team confidence, and builds a culture of responsible innovation. So all the results, time saved, the quality maintained, the confidence gained, and then the manager or the leader encourages others to try similar experiments in their daily work and then share the results in team meetings. And that about brings me to the end of my talk. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll be here till the end of the session. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Ivan. Really, really helpful. And I love the kind of practical case studies with each example. Really helpful. Christian, without further ado, I'll hand over to you. I know Joel will be presenting on the slides. Just checking that your audio isn't coming through. We'll just give it one last try.
Let's try this. Can you know?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. And thanks for the intro, Jesse, earlier today. And Ivan, thanks for the presentation. You will see some parallels, which is great because it means we're all approaching it in a very similar way and have similar guidance. Just by quick introduction, Christian Wagner from the public policy team here at Google. As Jesse mentioned, I've been working on our consumer-facing product, the Gemini app, which hopefully you all have seen at some point. I've been doing this work not on Gemini, but on public policy for over 10 years now. And I think this is fair to say it's probably the most exciting moment in my Google career. So I'm very excited to share that excitement with you. If we can go to the next slide. What you will see, what I thought we're going to do today is just to give you like a quick overview, big picture, why are we excited about it. Then I will share some ideas and advice on how you can get started. You will see some similarities to what Ivan just shared. Making it concrete, what are the 5 steps that we're suggesting to actually get started and to put words into action. A little disclaimer and suggestion on how to making sure that you use these AI tools in a safe and responsible way. And then we'll head over into the more practical spot around prompt engineering and some examples to leave you with. I will say that this is a very beginner-friendly setup that I've prepared. I would love to like share more exciting and like more complex things with you maybe in a future session. But maybe on the next slide, as you will see, why are we excited about this? I think, you know, high-level picture is that we see that there is a lot of excitement already for those that are start using AI. We see that it helps people save time. In fact, we saw that 33% and experts have been giving us the feedback that it actually can save government employees a significant amount of time. Of course, that's time that can be used for other more critical work oftentimes, right? So it frees up a lot of time that otherwise would be very busy with and doing things that maybe are less relevant. We also see that 8 out of 10 people globally believe that it's important to actually use AI to streamline the government. So there's also interest or pressure, one could say, from citizens, from constituents there to actually look into how AI can be helpful. And then, of course, if we look into the first really interesting examples, I just put one example here, but you will find tons of those examples. I'm sure all of you have many better examples, but in Detroit and Michigan, we worked with the city there and provided them with some of our AI tools, and actually it helped them to save over 165 million just using AI to detect leak pipes. So just like one minor example, but it just shows the potential of the technology if used in the right way. Now, I will also say that today, of course, we focus more on generative AI. There are lots of other AI applications and tools that governments could employ to improve their services. But of course, generative AI is kind of the more first hands-on experience that I think is just making it very easy for people to use. Okay, if we can go to the next slide, I think at a high level where we see the potential for governments to leverage AI is definitely around like improving operations, really seeing how AI can use to streamline services, make them more agile, maybe like use it to develop applications, make them the UX more user-friendly. AI can also help with security, right? I mean, at Google, we've been using AI for decades now to use to detect spam, for example, in email. So that's also an AI application. We've definitely seen a really interesting opportunity to use AI to help the connection with communities and constituents. That's actually a really cool project if you are interested to look into it. In Kentucky in the US, where they have started organizing virtual town halls and basically asking the entire population for feedback on what can be improved. And people use that tool online, provided their feedback, and that AI has been used to kind of extract the most relevant information that came back from all of their citizens, which these town halls obviously are usually not attended by a ton of people. Now the digital town halls are much easier to access, and it's been a great success story, really interesting if you have a moment. I think there are a number of articles about this. And then, yeah, lastly, it also helps, of course, with decision making. So again, AI can really help you to craft better policy by actually looking into the data, by getting deeper insights, using AI as your assistant to really going through a lot of information that otherwise would either be very complex or very time consuming, and then AI can be a fantastic helper. Okay, that's just like as a big picture overview of like what AI can help you with. As you will see on the next slide, let's get started. So how do we put AI into action and practice? We've explored some of the ways already in the previous slide now around how the public sector can use AI, but I think it's also exciting now to like see what this actually means in practice. In the next few slides, what we will do is to basically go through this START framework that you may or may not have heard about it before, but the idea really is for you and your teams to get started using AI. So what does it mean? If we go on the next slide, you will see that in practice, the START framework breaks down into these 5 different elements. It's about selecting tasks that you want to look into. It's about telling the AI what you want, about analyzing, refining, and trying it again. So let me break this down in more detail. And as I said, you will see some similarities there with what Ivan just presented. To get started, look for a repeated task that you're working on very frequently. Ideally, a low-risk one to start, such as maybe summarizing a public report. There may be many others you can think about what these repeated tasks are. Then the next step is about telling the AI what you actually need. We'll talk about this in a second when we talk about the prompt engineering part, but you have to give the AI tools that you decide to use a role. If you find the audience, maybe it's your leadership for an update that you have to share. Maybe it's your team that you want to provide an update with, or maybe you respond to inquiries from citizens, constituents, or other stakeholders that you have to share updates with. Again, if you define the audience, that's an important first step. Now, then, of course, once you get the response from the AI tool, you will have to analyze the result. I think the important thing that I always like to highlight is that you are the expert, right? I mean, of course, these AI tools seem incredibly smart and craft in no time wonderful responses, but eventually they are just machines that have the capability of being really great in crafting texts, but they don't really have the same level of expertise that you have. So always remember, you're the expert, you're in control. And so with that in mind, you should also review the text. That may sound written in a very confident way. I'm myself not a native speaker, so I also very often I'm very impressed by the outputs that I get, but we should not necessarily be taking that wonderfully crafted response as a sign of accuracy, which is why you will have to always review the responses. Now, of course, you may get a response that you like or may not like. Again, use your critical judgment, maybe refine the output, maybe add things to it yourself once you've seen the result. And all of this is, of course, an iterative process, right? So try it again if you are not happy with what you have seen and the response. Try and change the prompt that you've put in. Try to maybe use a different document. Many of these AI tools, of course, have the capability to upload documents. Maybe there's a different document that works better. So just give it a try, play around, and see what works. Okay, if you go to the next slide, please. As I mentioned, I wanted to quickly just highlight, because I think we get that feedback or the question very frequently when talking with users about like, well, what do I actually have to take care of when I'm using the technology? I think first, as a starting point, make sure that you don't enter any confidential or sensitive information if you are using a tool that is freely available, right? There are obviously dozens of different applications available that have similar chatbot or AI assistant experiences. There are some, such as we at Google offer, of course, also a customer solution, a workspace solution that some of you may have access to, where we have actually committed publicly not to use that data to train our models or providing the inputs to human reviewers. Other companies have very different perspectives there, so just check in with your IT department if you don't know yourself what's okay and what's not okay. But I think as a starting point, especially if you just experiment and don't have access to safer tools, the advice is to not necessarily upload any sensitive and confidential information. Also importantly, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I think the copyright perspective is always to make sure that you not just copy paste content. I mean, that can also happen, right? You may just upload content from copyrighted materials and ask it to summarize or like extract some information, and it may just be a copy paste of the original. Now, that of course may risk you, if you then use that for further information, that may risk you ending up in some copyright issues if you claim to use copyrighted content as your own content. So just make sure that you are not there. The third point, I think we already spoke about a few times now, always check the responses that you receive for a variety of reasons. And of course, hallucinations is still an issue. Again, some providers may do a better job than others in how they are approaching accuracy and information quality, but it's always good to check the response and the sources that it provides to, especially if you start experimenting with it. Over time, you may feel that you have a better idea of what the responses look like. There also obviously are tools, and I've seen it here in the comments popping up every now, like NotebookLM, which are really designed to just ground information. Sorry, you just upload information and your responses are grounded in the information that you've uploaded. So that reduces the risk of hallucination significantly. But again, there are different use cases and so different approaches. And then last but not least, it's good practice to disclose if you're using AI tools. So just, I mean, there may be policies within your different departments and on organizations how to disclose that, but I think we generally learned that it's good practice to disclose that. Okay, on the next slide.
Just a minute or two.
Just very quick 4 practical tips for prompting as a starter. First of all, like use natural language. Consider the AI system that you're using similar to a personal assistant. In other words, be specific, provide context, speak in natural language. I know it sounds odd, and we all had to learn how to use Google search 15 years ago and how we use keywords. Well, the good news is that now actually you can start talking very naturally with these chatbots. So just do that, write in full sentences, share your complete thoughts, give the full context. Be specific, as I said, so really explain what you want to do, whether it's summarizing something, it's analyzing, comparing. So just be specific on what you want. The chatbots won't be able to assume or look into your head. Be concise, but also don't be overly complex. So as we go through the prompt engineering bit in a second, you will see what I mean with that. And then, of course, last but not least, like make it a conversation. You may get a response that you may not like, or where you feel like, hey, that's not exactly the format that I wanted it to be. So use a follow-up query, use a follow-up prompt, and ask it to, for example, restructure it or change the tone, change the length, look for more complex responses. One of the things that I think we had given as an advice initially is if you have a specific audience in mind, I don't know, it's like formulate this in a way that it is understood by a 10-year-old. It's giving you a very different response than if you say craft a response that works for a 30-year-old master student in engineering about quantum physics. So like you're obviously like know your audience, right? And so be explicit about this. That's basically going back to that earlier point. And on the next slide, you will see the more sophisticated framework around prompt engineering. You could go to the next slide. Yeah, perfect.
Christian, just last minute or so.
Yeah, perfect. I think we already talked about this, or Ivan did. So basically a couple of elements, right? As I mentioned, you need to give it a role. So, you know, you are a nutritionist, you are a policymaker, you are a citizen, you are an organizational leader, whatever the audience you want it to be, just be clear about it. Define the goal. You see a couple of examples in here of how to define the goal. Know your audience, I mentioned that as well. And then, of course, we have the formatting that you may have in mind, and the style as well. So you can look into these examples later, or we can talk about it in the Q&A. If you go into the next slide, which is just, you know, a couple of ideas how to get started using these tools. I mentioned that some of them already earlier, summarizing content. You can also use them to learn and understand things. So, you know, if there are some, I don't know, policies, for example, that you would want to understand better, maybe in a different market, in a different region, just upload their laws and, you know, start familiarizing yourself with that. It may be about new complex issues. I don't know, maybe there's some new financial regulation that you need to study because you knew that area, so you can use these tools as well to deep dive into it. Of course, it's also about content creation, right? You can also use them to brainstorm and craft position papers, new ideas, responses to citizens. Some of them may be grounded information, others may be really free-flowing, and you're just exploring like, hey, how can I come up with a creative response to this challenging task that maybe my manager has given me? And then last but not least, it's about automating tasks, which, you know, we're not really covering here, but that's also a possibility. I have 2 quick examples, if Jesse allows me, which I can take at 30 seconds.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
Perfect. Yeah, just like here, as I mentioned, just 2 examples summarizing content. I think now we skipped 1 slide too far already. Yeah, and you see on the right here, I mentioned some of those as examples just now. You know, if you are trying to understand some environmental policies or natural resource policies, different ideas, you can ask the chatbot of your choice to do that. You can compare different policies in different countries, different regions. So example prompts are here on the left. And then if you go to the next slide, and with that I will conclude, you can of course also use it to analyze and compare policy documents or other like relevant information. Again, you can upload documents into many of these chatbots and then just like allow them to understand it, deep dive it, compare it, analyze it, and then of course create content in a way that you like. And with that, I will conclude. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Christian. Really appreciate that. And thanks everyone for the really, really interesting comments and the questions that are coming through. We'll spend the rest of today's session kind of just going, working through those questions. Before we move over to that, just a quick note that as many of you may be aware, this is kind of, we're just at the 2-year mark of the Government AI Campus, which launched in 2023. And we're very excited to be announcing that we're launching a new event series as part of the Government AI Campus called the AI Skills Lab. So this is a new monthly virtual event series of short focused sessions on practical AI skills. Each event will give you a new tool or technique to add to your toolbox. We've been talking about lots of these today. So the first session is AI for analyzing data, and that's coming up, I think, just on the 23rd of September next month. And we'll have 2 more after that before the year's end on email writing and policy making prompts. So just another opportunity for you to kind of focus in on specific applications and ways to use AI in your work. My colleague will be sharing links to those in the chat, so please do sign up for the ones that interest you. Excellent. So we have some really interesting questions that have come through. I'll try to get through as many as possible in the next sort of 15 minutes or so. So to Iwan, to Christian, as you know, if we can keep the answers moving and slow and quick, that'd be great. An interesting one that Alexandra asked first about half an hour ago, just one that we see a lot popping up on any insights on the environmental aspects of using AI and any kind of recommendations of where people can find more information about that. Christian, I'll not to put you on the spot, but I might ask you to take that one.
Yeah, no, I generally think very good question, and also a concern that I think we definitely need to take very seriously and look into, because of course it is very accurate that the training and the serving of these AI models is resource intense. We actually at Google published literally last week, and I'm happy to share this of interest, a very lengthy technical report assessing how much energy it actually requires to respond to a question of a user. And we found that on average, it uses less than, like, if the average response to a prompt uses less, or comparable to like less than watching TV for 9 seconds. So in other words, we're like constantly reducing the energy consumption. 9 seconds of watching TV is probably not a significant amount of time. The other element, not just energy, is like water consumption, right? And then we also published a number, just if you're interested, how much water does it actually use, because obviously water is used for cooling the data centers. And it's equivalent to around 5 drops of water per query. So a rather small amount, but of course, I think we need to continue looking into how to reduce that. And Google has made commitments also to use only to be energy neutral by 2030. So very important question, I think, that we all need to keep an eye on.
Thanks, really helpful. Cedric asks, when it comes to our respective institutions, how can we make sure that all of us employees, including those from underrepresented racial groups, including Black and otherwise, are at the tables where organizational AI policies are being made or developed? Iwan, I'll put that one to you, given that you're working through these issues in government.
So I can give a very specific example. So how Ontario Public Service is doing this is we have a ministry responsible for deploying AI tools, and then we created a pilot program where we gave out licenses to a group of around 350 odd first early adopters who and then we have these conversations with the ministry about what's working, what's not working, and we are like completely represented across the board from the and have diverse opinions about things that are being used. When it comes to tables where organizational AI policies are being made and developed, I think like the survey responses that we give is sort of directing them how to use it in particular cases. But I would say like have that communication with whoever is responsible for deploying these tools within the organization, and see where that takes you.
Yeah, really appreciate that. I don't know if there's any follow-up on that, Hendrik. You can follow up in the chat and we can pick that up as well. Joe asks, how can tech companies support policymakers, and how can policymakers support each other to mitigate the security risks of AI? Christian, I'll put that to you, and then I'd love to have your perspective on that as well.
Yeah, no, great question. Look, I think generally the way we develop and advance AI as we go towards AGI, I think, is a very collaborative effort, right? I think tech companies will not be able to evolve AI on their own. Like, we need to do this with all different stakeholders, government, civil society. I think it's a two-way street. We need that feedback. We need to develop these tools jointly. I think the opportunity is significant, but also the potential of things to go into a direction that we don't want. So I think that's why it's important that we do these things collaboratively. And I think that is true across all of the potential risk area, but security definitely being a significant one. So, there are obviously, I don't want to go into too much detail now, but there are obviously a number of institutes, right? In the US, you have NIST. In the UK, you have blanking now the name, the AI Security Institute, many other labs that governments have started where they really hire fantastic engineers, smart people, to also scrutinize tech companies and see how do we train these models, how do we make sure that the data sets are designed in a way that we can address some of the potential security and other ethical risks. And so I think it's important that there's this collaborative effort, that there is, of course, also, for us as tech companies, the responsibility to be open, to go into these conversations, explain how the technology works, and address questions that government and also other stakeholders have. And equally, I think we also benefit from getting the feedback from academia, from governments on the concerns that we have, because that's like important guidance for us in which direction we can develop these tools.
Yeah, really helpful. And Ivan, maybe you can share a perspective, having worked on AI projects in government, some of the security risks that you are thinking through when you're building tools for the public sector.
Yeah, so I've also worked with digital transformation in the healthcare sector. And one of the things that I was sort of involved with when we were looking at vendors for particular digital tools is like, are they HIPAA compliant? Is there GDPR compliance with those tools? In some cases they were, in some cases they weren't. And so we didn't go with those which didn't have compliance. So yeah, conversations and seeing if those tools are compliant with certain established processes or security to get rid of security risk, basically. So yeah, communication between the tech companies and the policymakers about the compliance records or everything that's happening behind the scenes, let's say, when it comes to development. So,
yeah, really helpful. Excellent. There's a really great question here that I think Martin Simmons has asked. Are there any killer use cases that we can show users to help them adopt an AI tool like Copilot? Please share. I know that at the beginning of this event, 50% of you said you're already experimenting with AI. So I'd love to put that question back to the audience in the chat. If you had to show Martin, one killer use case that you think could help someone be more confident or excited about using AI, please share it in the chat and we'll kind of collect those and share them at the end. But Kimberly asks also a very important question here, and I think a few people asked it. It's a very simple question, but I think it's an important one. Where does the data that we share with AI tools end up? I wonder if you could both share that perspective. Iwan first, and then Christian briefly.
So I haven't, this is from Copilot, and that is why this is approved to use within Ontario Public Service, because as Martin Simmons answered over here, none of the prompt or the data is used to train the LLM. So the information stays inside the data boundary, which is true for Copilot. Now, again, other tools, I don't know as much, but whoever is looking at deploying these tools in the professional environment will also be looking at, is the data going to get, in external hands, let's say. So where does the data we share with AI tools end up? In specifically the Copilot case, because I know about this, it doesn't go anywhere. It stays within the boundaries. But other tools, it might be different, which I don't have the answer for right now.
No, that's fair enough. Christian, I don't know if you have any perspective to share, maybe for Gemini.
Yeah, as I mentioned during the presentation, I mean, we have the customer solution, which we also offer to governments, and there it is very much like what Ivan just mentioned, where the data is not being used for any purposes to improve the product or to train the models. But generally speaking, I think the question is fair. That's why I mentioned it, to not enter any sensitive, confidential information if you're using one of the freely available products that are more consumer focused. Because of course, usually the information is oftentimes used to train the product, improve the product. Some of these extracts may be shared with some human reviewers. I mean, again, all of this happens just to make the product better over time, because of course the only way to make it better is by actually getting insights into what went wrong. And users oftentimes, leave feedback with this thumbs up, thumbs down solution that many of the products have implemented. But yeah, anyway, that is for consumer-facing products, at least on the Google side. I can't speak for our competitors, but we have a government solution where we don't use any of the data that you would input for training or review.
Yeah, really helpful. I'll stick with you, Christian. There's a really useful question here, and I think it speaks to a theme that we saw in a lot of the comments. So someone has asked, do you need to put in inverted commas in front and after the text you want AI to work on so it can detect the particular text? And maybe you could sort of maybe respond to that question specifically, but also just talk about some of how people can make sure that AI is sort of drawing on the best information that they want it to use. I think someone talked about context engineering. Maybe you could explain that briefly, I don't know, in about a minute or so. Yeah.
I think as a starting point, there are different tools for different use cases, right? So at Google, and I'm sorry, I can't speak on behalf of the industry, but I'm just giving you the Google perspective. We have two different products, or more than that, but two products that may help in this case. One is the Gemini app, which is our chatbot. The other is Notebook LM. Notebook LM, as the name already suggests, is really there for you to upload a ton of material, maybe reports, maybe emails, other information. None of the information that you upload there is also used for training or human review, so it's all safe. If you ask Notebook LM a question, it basically extracts information only based on the material that you have uploaded. In other words, the risk of hallucination is very low. It will not make things up. It will not connect to the open web and try to find other relevant information. It is really just grounding or corroborating, as you may hear in discussions as the term, on the sources that you have provided it with. That's somewhat different to chatbots like the Gemini app, where You can, of course, also steer a little bit the output, and you can do that by uploading documents. You can also in your prompt be very explicit and just say like only use the materials attached, or before, you know, if accuracy is particularly important, you can also nudge the chatbot to be very accurate and make sure that all of the sources are indeed correct. That's not bulletproof, but it's definitely helpful if, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the more context you provide, and context in this case can also be like that accuracy is of utmost importance in the response, the better the response of the chatbot will be. But I think as a general rule of thumb, there are products where you will only ground on information that you provide, which are tools like NotebookLM. I know there are some other products that do similar things as well out there. If you are okay for a more creative response that is not just very strictly looking into the information uploaded, I think tools like Gemini can be really helpful here as well. And even there, you can also narrow a little bit what is being used as source for the output by uploading relevant information, or by prompting it in the right way.
Really helpful. Thank you, Christian. Christian and Irene, I don't know if you can see the Q&A tab on your screen, but there are a few questions there that maybe not understandably, but if you are able just to answer some of those questions in the chat while we still have the last few minutes. Just a quick notice before we all jump off today's call, just to remind you again about the Skills Labs events that are coming up over the next 3 months. Please do sign up and look out for those, particularly the ones that interest you. And I'm sure many of the questions and themes that we've been talking about there today will be relevant in those events. There's also should be a poll question coming up, which is just for our own kind of reflection and learning on how well this event has gone. So on a scale of 1 to 10, please rank your agreement with this statement. This event was a valuable use of my time, where 1 is completely disagree and 10 is completely agree. Again, that's just for our own internal reporting purposes. So please helpful to have your feedback on how we can improve. And just a reminder, of course, my screen will be playing up just now as I'm trying to switch. Really helpful. So yes, a reminder to sign up for the Skills Labs event. And a final thanks to both of our brilliant speakers, Christian and Irene, on sharing their reflections today. Christian and Irene, we have a bit of a tradition at Apolitical to have a one-word takeaway at the end of our event. I was wondering if you might be able to summarize what you've taken away from the questions and the comments you've heard today, maybe just share a one-word or one-sentence takeaway.
I think my one word would be opportunity. I know there are lots of questions that we need to address first, but once we're there, I think you will see the potential of technology. So just try it and you will love it.
Amazing. And a special shout out to Christian as well, because he persevered through his laptop not allowing us to connect to Zoom. So thank you for making it work as well. And to Irene, your one-word takeaway just before we drop off.
I would say hopeful. Hopeful that everybody tries and experiments, and this is what the future looks like. And then it's better to get on the board and then try out things that work in your professional environment, even personal environment, because yeah, it's better to start learning and developing, and then being there when it happens, sort of a thing. But yeah, just hopeful.
Excellent, and that's exactly what the Government AI Campus is for. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Please do stay in touch with the campus, join us at future events, ask questions, share resources. Thanks again for your time, and we will see you hopefully at the next event. Have a great day.